When it gets to Edmonton, it gets emptied out, and this is, I think, about 22 tons of recycling can fit into one of those trucks at one time. So 22 tons of recycling gets tipped out, and then the facility will go along it and scan it meter by meter for contamination rates. If that contamination is too high, they will refuse to accept it. The 22 tons will get loaded back onto the truck and it will be sent to be incinerated, which is why we do so much pushing on like contamination messages and reducing contamination and recycling properly, because there can be a few people on a street that, or in a parish, that really don't recycle properly, and that can actually ruin it for an entire round, basically. Particularly things like food waste. Obviously, it actually can take up to 2 months for your recycling to leave your curbside to get to London. And obviously, if there's food waste in there, that will spread and get moldy. And particularly because we collect mixed recycling, it will spread through the cardboard that will get wet, moldy, disintegrate, and then it ruins it. It contaminates it. However, if it's good, then it will get loaded onto a conveyor belt, and there are a team of much more thorough pickers, and they will remove anything that is not recyclable. That conveyor belt then vibrates and it shakes off all the paper and cardboard. It then passes underneath a magnet and removes all of the metal items. And it then gets scanned with infrared technology to pick up exactly where the plastics are on that conveyor belt. And it all goes over an edge. And as it goes off the edge, it blasts air and will shoot this plastic off. Very high tech. And then you are left with the glass. And then each of those materials are processed separately. So the glass is smashed up into aggregates. The paper and cardboard are baled up like that. Plastics are melted down, dyes are removed, and they're turned into pellets, and similar for metals. And then they can all then get sold on to manufacturers to be remanufactured into brand new products. So I think I had a few questions. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. I always get a lot of questions about end destination data. So what happens to the recycling once it's been processed? And obviously there's a lot of negative media, or not a lot. There have been a few stories of recycling being found where it shouldn't have been found in fields in Malaysia and things like that. And I think the most important thing to say is that recycling is a commodity. It has an economic value to us as a country and as a local authority. So we get money for the recycling that we send down to Edmonton. That we get it in recycling credits from County Council. And that obviously boosts our economy as a country and also us as a local authority. So to dump recycling in a field is really, really stupid, because you're effectively dumping money. As you can see here, we, in 2018 and 19, which is our last publicly available year, you can see that we sold all of our materials to UK and European countries only. However, it is worth saying that some of these may have been brokers who then obviously resell it onto other companies. But we do need to report our end destination data to DEFRA on a quarterly basis, and that is actually publicly available on a website called Waste Data Flow. It's a bit of a tricky website. I do have instructions on how to use them, so if any of you do want to try and use it, send me an email and I can send those over to you, because they are on our website. However, we got a new website today, so don't know if they'll still be there, but let me know. And there's also a bit of sort of negativity around plastics going to China. China do buy plastics. Without China, plastics would probably not be recycled. They have incredibly high standards of the plastic that they accept. In fact, that's one of the reasons I believe why plastic bags are no longer recyclable, is that the grade of plastic from them is so low that for China stopped accepting it, because they couldn't remanufacture it into products. A majority of the recycled plastic items that we use and buy today come from China. So yes, it's, again, that's just a negative connotation that really shouldn't be there. And then finally, end destination data varies month by month because it depends on, like I said, the market. Is a supply and demand. So, you know, one company buy our glass one month, but then they've still got that glass the following month, so they don't want it. So it's, you know, it's a market. It's a constantly moving market. Okay. And then barriers to recycling, which I've mentioned a few times. We've got obviously recycling contamination, and we've got 4 big ones: nappies, textiles, food waste, and black bin liners. Not only are black bin liners not recyclable, but also they hide what's inside them. You know, that's why we say you must use a clear sack, not a black bag, not a coloured sack, not one of those white, slightly see-through sacks. It has to be completely clear for your recycling. And that's so our crews can see what's inside them. And often we do find up at the transfer station, when the recycling first gets tipped, that black bin liners tend to hide food waste or nappies. I obviously mentioned then about it going mouldy, but you've also got to think about that when recycling goes into the back of our bin trucks, it gets compressed in order to make more space. So if there are food waste or nappies in there, then they're more likely to spread around. And this has got serious implications further down the line, as mentioned when I talked about the material recovery facility. You know, it can cause an entire truckload of recycling getting rejected. And then you've got some pictures of food waste in our lovely recycling. And that's what the poor guys up at the transfer station have to deal with. There are also issues with some environmental movements and blanket approaches. So obviously I mentioned compostable and biodegradable products earlier. In particular, it's a lot of them will say sort of put me in your food waste bin, or people think they're great because they're biodegradable and compostable, but they are only biodegradable and compostable if you have home composting. Otherwise they have to go into your refuse bin. It depends on what the local authority uses for processing food waste or garden waste. Some authorities might use mechanisms that do accept it, but for the most part they don't. So yes, they're only suitable for home composting. And like I say, blanket approaches is that, for example, the National Trust magazine, when it moved to a potato starch wrapper, and it said on it, as I say, put me in your food bin. So I got a lot of queries about that. They did actually change it. And now it says check with your local authority. So I think they probably got quite a few complaints about that. And then finally, we have got BinZone that hopefully you guys are familiar with. That's our smartphone app, which basically you can type in an item and it tells you which bin it goes in. If you ever use that and there isn't, you know, the item isn't on there, let me know, because I control the back end of BinZone, so I can add items to it. Okay, and then finally, final slide is the impact of COVID on waste. So it's been a wild year for a lot of industries, waste being one of them. So there's basically all those legislations I spoke about at the beginning of the presentation have been delayed. So that's the extended producer responsibility, the deposit return scheme, and the plastic packaging tax. I think our DRS is planning on coming in next year, but the others, I think they're still trying to decide, because obviously a lot of them had gone to sort of Parliament when it suspended back in March, so everything was put on hold. And even Scotland, who were sort of being the example for the DRS, has now been postponed to over a year. That was supposed to be coming in this year, and they've put it back, I think, to the end of next year, which is a shame, because I think we were kind of hoping to use them as a guinea pig. There was obviously a lot of issues with import-export of packaging, as many plastics come from China. So you will remember that there was a shortage of hand sanitizer at the beginning of the lockdown, and that wasn't actually because of the hand sanitizer, it was the plastic bottles, because all the plastic bottles came from China, and we obviously weren't letting anything in from China, and they weren't able to export them. And that goes for obviously sort of recycling as well. We had issues at our material recovery facility down in London that they were, due to social distancing, they weren't able to have a full team, which meant that the workload going through there was a lot slower. And that didn't go well with the fact that we saw an increase in all waste types during lockdown. So you can see there that is a so March, April, May last year compared to this year, you can see that all tonnages were higher because everybody was at home. Everybody was cooking at home, so they're producing more food waste. Everyone was buying online, so we had a massive increase in cardboard and side waste, so the extra recycling we were collecting. So our tonnages went through the roof. However, an increase in recycling and the amount of waste produced does mean an increase in contamination as well. So we had to do quite a big push on those OOPS tags as well during lockdown. And then finally, we had an increase ourselves in South Oxfordshire in obviously absences because of our crews. You can't social distance if you're a bin man because you're in a cab with another man or woman. So we did have to sort of accommodate for that. However, we were one of the very few districts in the country that did not drop a single waste stream. I know that some places in Bucks actually stopped doing recycling, so stopped collecting recycling altogether, but we managed to, well, Biffa persevered and continued to pick up all bins, which was great. And let me just check, I haven't written down any questions for that. No. All right. And then my final slide just says questions, and I will just go through the questions that I had left, and I know that there are some more as well. So the first one, let me just move my Zoom thing. Is it possible for the council contractor to use the schemes that exist for the recycling of more difficult items? And then that kind of links to the next question, which said TerraCycle has collection points mainly in schools for some of these, but it is not widely accessible. In short, no, it is not possible for the council to use these schemes. Recycling is dictated by the technologies that we have accessible to us at the MRF, which is the recycling centre. There is not enough, and also, like I say, the supply and demand. There isn't enough of a supply and demand to remake those difficult items. There is a reason that they're difficult, and it's because either they're difficult to be made into new things, or they're just they're difficult to recycle, or they're difficult to be made into new things because there isn't a market for it. So TerraCycle, work with the manufacturer, it puts the onus, it's basically extended producer responsibility. That manufacturer works with TerraCycle to find specialist small recycling companies to recycle those items, or the big manufacturers like Walkers have to create their own recycling centre effectively. Our household waste isn't sort of reflective of that. It's just that it's like two entirely different things. It's almost like corporate versus public. It is that effectively, which I know is a bit of a strange answer. So basically, no, unfortunately. But like I say, I think obviously Pringles were doing TerraCycle, and the fact that they're changing their packaging makes me think that perhaps they're not quite as successful as we may think. The council officers were a crisp packet collection point with TerraCycle until earlier this year. I was the one that had to go through every crisp packet and make sure that they weren't full of food, which often they were. And actually, when I researched it, it was something like 0.001% of the plastic that Walkers produced was being recycled through the scheme. So I think the better option is just don't buy those items if you know that they're not recyclable, or minimize as much as you can and put the onus back on the manufacturer to change their packaging. And what do you do if you're in doubt over where to put items, particularly plastic, as there are so many variations in type and weight? How about larger items such as plastic sheeting, broken frying pan, plastic plant trays? So if you're in doubt, send me an email or give me a call. Or I say us, me or us. Either of those email addresses is fine. Probably the latter, just in case I'm not in and someone else can pick it up. and just type the item and I will give you an answer. You can also check BinZone, our app. If you don't have a smartphone, it's actually a web tool as well on our website. So if you go onto our website, you'll find it and you can do the same thing, just type in an item. Otherwise, if in doubt, put it in your grey bin, as I've mentioned. And for the examples, plastic sheeting, that is your grey bin, that's not recyclable. Broken frying pan, ideally a household waste recycling centre. And plastic plant trays, grey bin or household waste recycling centre. You could probably put the frying pan in your grey bin as well. Just remember that we don't take any extra waste with grey bins, and the lid must always be able to close, so space is a little bit more limited. So if you are taking a trip to the tip, it would go to the tip. Now I can see, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That is a good place to start. And then I think I should be able to, there we go, see the chat box and see if there's any questions. Oh yeah, rightio. So is that 63% of the green bin is recycled, or 63? So 63% of your total waste is recycled. You can answer that one. Apologies. Oh, okay. What are Tetra Paks made of, and what products can they be used in once recycled? Tetra Paks are made of layers of plastic, foil, and cardboard together. I'm not sure what they can be made. I'm assuming that they are separated. So a lot of products that aren't recyclable are not recyclable because they're what we call mixed material. For example, the blister packs. Tetra Paks, I assume, because this would have been before my time, so forgive me, I assume that there was a lot of pressure. It's one of those items, it's like the disposable coffee cups. There was a lot of pressure put on manufacturers, but also material recovery facilities to be able to recycle them, basically, because once separated, you can recycle the separate parts. So basically, they bought in technology. They created the technology eventually to separate it. In terms of what they can be recycled into, I assume it's the separate parts, so the same things that plastics, paper, and foil would be made into. Next one, don't tea bags contain plastic in the bag material? Yes, some of them do. Again, I think that's changing because of pressure. The old extended producer responsibility is kicking in. It's such a small amount, it breaks down. It either breaks down or the food waste facility, Severn Trent Green Power food waste facility, were well ahead of their time when they built that facility, and it has got a lot of very, very fine filters to basically get rid of microplastics, because otherwise we just end up with microplastics in that fertilizer. So those filters do remove any small, tiny pieces of plastic. So yes, we do still accept tea bags in the old food waste bin. What happens to the CO2 from the burning in the incinerator? I hope that I answered that with the scrubbing. I unfortunately don't know the precise technologies that they use. I know that part of it is the really old-fashioned charcoal, which works a treat, but there'll be a lot more high-tech ones than that. If you, the facility is owned by Viridor. If you go on their website, I believe that you will find more information on that. Also, the Facebook page Oxfordshire Recycles, shared recently as part of Recycle Week, which was a couple of weeks ago, shared a video on there that showed, oh no, wait, that wasn't Viridor. Sorry, forgive me, I've got that wrong. Check the Viridor website and they will be able to, they should have the information there. If not, send them an email, because they have got an education team, because they usually do tours. That's obviously stopped now, but they do have a team like me specifically for their facility, so they'll be able to answer that question better. Sorry about that. What happens to garden waste and SODC? Yes, we do also collect garden waste. I didn't cover it in this presentation because it's not a statutory service, so we don't not everyone has it. Basically, you have to pay to have a garden waste bin. Some districts collect their food waste with their garden waste, and they will do something called in-vessel composting, which is sort of a combination of what we do with composting, so it's enclosed. Our garden waste is collected separately, and it is composted in a much more conventional manner at the same facility as the food waste, so massive heaps outside. And that is also sold on, the compost is then sold on to local farmers, or it was given away in our annual compost giveaway, which isn't happening at the moment because of COVID. But yes, we do collect it and it becomes compost. However, please don't put compostable items in your garden waste bin either, because we can't guarantee that they're compostable when we collect the bins. So we won't collect the bin, or it will get blown away and we'll have a litter problem. How does plastic packaging from the UK end up in the sea, as has been found? I don't know if you mean just generally like litter wise, or I mean, yeah, most of the stuff that ends up in our waterways is due to littering. Like I say, in terms of if it's bags that are found in fields and things on the TV programs, who knows? As far as we're aware, all our recycling is recycled and all of our waste is sent to our waste company, to the incinerator. It's it's difficult for us to know entirely, to track. As far as we're aware, we are doing everything properly, and so are Biffa. It's then past that point, but like I say, it would be nonsensical for any company to dump it in the sea or elsewhere, because they've paid for it. So it's dumping money. Excuse me. I believe that there is a company that can split the aluminium from the plastic used in pill packs. Are you considering this possible route? That goes back to the first question that I answered. If there is not, just because there's one company that recycles it, as a council, we won't use private companies. We have to use one facility. The cost of effectively, we'd have to do a separate collection for pill packets. We'd have to have a bin crew go around and only pick up pill packets. It's completely not financially viable, and that would go to one sort of recycler, and we'd probably inundate them with pill packets. So no, until that is a nationwide collection, no local authority will be able to do that. What percentage of recycling collection lorries are contaminated? So our contamination rate is around, I think the last one that we published would have been 2018-19, and we were at about 12%. Like I said, unfortunately, there's sort of a delay in those those rates getting reported, because it has to all get checked by DEFRA. So yeah, we're about 12% of our total waste. So that will be the same as sort of lorries, 12% contamination rate. Excuse my ignorance, but I was surprised to see tinfoil on the list as recyclable, as on the packet I have it says only the tube and carton can be recycled. So is it okay to use for sandwich wrap? It is okay to use for sandwich wrap, and that's probably why the reason it probably says it's not recyclable is because it's often you use it for food. So obviously if it's got food on it, then it isn't recyclable. So even with tinfoil, we would ask you to wash it, to rinse it. We don't expect you to get the fairy liquid out and give it a scrub. Rinse it as much as you can. If there are bits on there, like cooked cheese and stuff that you're just not going to get off, then put that in the bin. Put it in the refuse, but otherwise that's fine in recycling. Should coloured tops be put on clear plastic bottles? Put back on plastic bottles? Yes, please. Doesn't matter the color, just put it back on the plastic bottle. I mentioned that right at the beginning about it keeps the plastic separate from the glass, so you can leave lids and labels on. That's absolutely fine. Who takes the digestate fertilizer, and what is the financial arrangement? It's local farmers. I don't know anything more than that. That's not to do with us. That's to do with the facility. So obviously we give them the food waste and they sell it on. That's not a council agreement. Would be a private agreement with Severn Trent Green Power. Again, look on their website. I know that they do have a video, like a virtual tour that they've done very recently, that is on the Oxfordshire Recycles webpage and is also probably on their website. So that's Severn Trent Green Power in Wallingford. Viridor. So spelled that way, but with an R on the end. Sorry. Viridor. Does SADC retain responsibility for historic landfill sites? I gather Belgium are recycling from them. No, we wouldn't have owned any of the sites. They would be private companies. Landfill mining is still quite a questionable thing. I don't know. I wouldn't want to comment on it. Yeah, I know that it is a thing. It's not happening here as of yet, or certainly not in our districts. We don't own the sites. Obviously, the waste, yes, may have been our responsibility, and we would have had to pay for that, but only time will tell, I suppose. How much money does SADC earn from all its recycling measures? I couldn't possibly tell you. I have absolutely no idea. That is far beyond my pay grade. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry about that. Enough to keep us going, I'll say. Mixed material jam jar lids, as in, I'm not sure if you mean different material to the jar. So if it's a metal lid, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really matter if you put the lid back on a jam jar, because the chances are the jam jar is going to smash anyway. So once it's in the truck, I'm trying to think of mixed material jam jar lids. Because they're the only ones I can think of are metal. Sorry about that. If I don't answer your question as well, please feel free to email it over to me. I've just realized that I'm not showing my screen, but I can, my email is waste.team@Southern Vale. Oh, there you go. You're showing me Sharwood's. Oh yeah. So it's just, yeah, that's just a metal one. So that would be fine. That you can keep that in your recycling. Yeah. Does shredded paper mess up the recycling? No, it doesn't. Weirdly, it doesn't, and it is still recyclable. So shredded paper is fine in your recycling bin as well. So that's all of them. I don't know if I can is someone else going to take control so that I don't have to unmute everyone, because I'm not sure how to do that. Because I'm done now. There you go. I think, or maybe everyone can unmute themselves.
Okay, so that covered an awful lot of questions, which was fantastic. That was an amazing talk. I think we need to give you a big round of applause. You've covered such a lot of information there. I certainly learned a lot. I hope people have had their questions answered today. Could you put up your, oh, there's the email.
There you go.
Just what I was going to ask you.